Jocelyn, Executive Director at Great Marriages, and I wanted to welcome you back for part 7 of 8 in our SOS, God's Plan for Healthy Relationships series. Today's topic is romance. So maybe you're feeling a little bit like the romance has taken a nosedive in your relationship, or you just want to amp it up a little bit, it's doing well. This event is for you. So Pastor Andy Shanholtz is going to present again from the Song of Solomon on romance. And I want you to listen for the 4 things that can kill romance. And then at the end, he goes through 8 things that can help you have great romance. So enjoy the presentation, and we'll see you when it's over.
Well, now the last time we had mentioned that in Song of Solomon, he deals with different phases of relationships in our journey. And it's all the way from dating, from attraction, dating, courtship, to the wedding, honeymoon night. And then we had 2 chapters that dealt with conflict and resolution. I find it interesting. There's 2 chapters to conflict because there's a lot of conflict in marriage. My wife and I have been married 40 years in July. I know some of you guys have been married a lot longer than that, almost double what we've been married almost. And you know what I'm talking about. There's conflict. And so, but after we saw this, after the conflict was resolved between Solomon and his wife Naamah, they leave for some time alone. And we mentioned that when we have conflict, making up can be a lot of fun. If you love each other, and making up can be a real blessing. So here we're seeing that Solomon and his wife are actually in a process of making up. She's admonished to dance before Solomon, the intimate dance of the culture. And it's interesting that at this time, in the Jewish culture, when they would get married, the wife would dance before her husband. It's almost like a strip dance, a strip tease or so. So it's talking about here in chapter 7, verses 1 through 9. It kind of picks it up at that point. And we see that Naamah, Solomon's wife, appears to be naked per Solomon's description of her, other than her wearing sandals. she's naked except for she's got sandals on her feet. The speculation is that she's performing this intimate dance, and Solomon describes his bride accordingly. In verses 1 through 4, he correlates her physical beauty with her character. Then in verses 5 through 6, he describes her beauty, and then in verses 7 through 9, he describes how her desirability, how much he wants her. And so we're going to discuss some factors that destroy romance in our marriage, and I'm going to provide some guidelines to what can make for great romance in this study. Remember, what came instinctively during dating must become a discipline after marriage, and that's the key. Isn't it funny how we work so hard as guys to win the heart and affection of the woman that we're attracted to? And I mean, we think about them at work. I know I worked in a furniture factory at the time. It was dangerous for me to even be on a saw because I was so consumed with who my wife wanted to be with her, and we weren't married yet. But we were engaged, and all I could think about was her. And I thought, man, I'm no good to anybody. I mean, I'm going to hurt myself on this saw. But yet, after we get married, what does that stop? Some will have that spark that goes for a little while, but you have to work for it. It becomes a discipline to continue to date and to engage your wife. It's almost like you put yourself in cruise control and you're just kind of coasting and not making an effort to continue to stimulate each other in a playful and loving manner. So I'm going to read some verses from Song of Solomon, chapter 7, verse 1 through chapter 8, verse 4. And we're going to look at this romance and marriage. And what I'm going to do, as in the past, I'm going to have some annotations of the verse. I'll read the verse, make a little commentary, and then I'll get into a kind of a summary of all of this and bring out some practical information that we can utilize in our current relationship. So starting in verse 1, chapter 7. How beautiful are your feet in sandals, O prince's daughter. The curves of your thighs are like jewels, the work of the hands of a skillful workman. So we see that Solomon is describing her beauty. And he's also commending that you're so perfect that someone had to be very specific in shaping you. And because something like you doesn't happen by chance. There had to be a creator that sculpted you because you're so beautiful. So the romance continues from her feet to the top of her head. He praises her as a noble. His praise is more sensuous and is very intimate. In the Bible, the upper legs are used as a symbol for steadfast loyalty and strength. And what Solomon is saying says, you are strong in character. You are not only beautiful, but you have great character. And then verse 2, your navel is a rounded goblet. It lacks no blended beverage. Your waist is a heap of wheat set about the lilies. Don't you love just the description? It's almost humorous, because if we were talking like that today, they'd have us locked up and say, "Are these guys nuts or what?" But this is the language they used, and what in the whole Song of Solomon, what's really cool about it, he's used a lot of poetic language to describe how he's feeling here. Very in modern day, more Shakespearean time. That's how Shakespeare would write. He would use language like that as well. And that was several years after this. But this is written in an Eastern mindset where he's using the vernacular of his day to describe the woman that he loves. Now, wine and grain were considered blessings in biblical days. And he says the belly was also thought of as the seat of emotions, that all your emotions came from the stomach area, the belly, in biblical thinking. So whenever they use the phrase, and the bowels or the belly or the stomach, they're speaking of your seat of emotions, and that's what he's describing. And what he's saying here, she is actually a blessing of God. Do we as husbands look at our wives and still look at them and say, they are a true blessing from God? Does a wife look at us and say, he's a true curse from God? No. Are we really blessings to each other? Because, the Bible says it's God who brings the woman unto the man and brings us together. And because God knows exactly what we need. So do we view our spouses today as still blessings from God? Verse 3, your two breasts are like two fawns, twins of a gazelle. Solomon is still very tender with her as on their honeymoon. He conveys two messages to his wife. Number one, he admires her ongoing youthfulness, but he also admires her responsiveness to him. She's enjoying the things he's saying. And he's enjoying what he's seeing. Verse 4, your neck is like an ivory tower, your eyes like the pools of Heshbon by the gate of Bath Rabbin. Your nose is like the tower of Lebanon, which looks towards Damascus. He describes her neck as a white tower, and that refers to great strength, and in value is also a symbol of her purity. Her eyes were like deep pools of water, and Solomon saw holiness in her eyes. And the pools here he makes reference to were used by the priests for purification. And then also the pools were also a source of refreshment as well. But Solomon referred to her nose as a tower of Lebanon looking towards Damascus, and Damascus was a major enemy of Israel at this time. So what Solomon is saying is he regards his wife as always being on the alert to the things that might bring trouble to him. I don't know about you, us guys are so compartmentalized. We could be one way at work, one way at home, one way at play, but a woman, everything's interconnected to them. It affects them differently than guys. What I mean by that, my wife will take things more personally than I do if I'm attacked. I've been attacked by, I was on the staff of a church for 10 years, and the pastor was extremely insecure. And he was very abusive emotionally. He was always demeaning his staff and always making us feel like, that we're just not real good. It got so bad that my wife decided, I'm on staff here with this church, but she decided, I'm not going to that church. So she quit going to church. The church I was pastoring, she quit going because she was so upset with how they were treating me, the leadership. And she goes, don't you see it? I said, yeah, I see it. But this is where I believe God has called me at this season. So I put up with it, all the kinds of abuse I was getting, and she decided she wasn't going to put up with it anymore. So I go to my pastor, my boss, and I said, do you want me to resign because my wife is no longer coming to this church? And it's like but I was on the verge of leaving that church anyway. That's when I took the job for Life Skills. So I had given them like a 4-month notice that I was going to be leaving. And so this was in October, November, December. It's near the end of the year, but I was going to work until April the next year, the following year, because at the end of December I went to part-time because I could do both jobs and kind of wean myself into the other ministry. And so I go, you want me to leave? And he says, no, you finish out your time here. You know, people really like you here. We want you to stay. And that's nice. So I stayed for that. But it was just, the point is that she always had my back. When I couldn't see that I was being abused, she saw it. And in order to get my attention, she decided, I'm not going there anymore. So she goes to another church. And then I ended up back at that church, and I was on staff for that church for a few years as well. But and I just find this to be interesting, how Solomon regarded his wife, always being on the alert for him and looking for things that may bring him trouble. And so Jean would a lot of times carry maybe resentment a lot longer than what I would. I'd let it go, but you touched my husband, you know, or you affected him emotionally, and she had a hard time letting that go. She's let it go now, but it was interesting how she really, it's almost like a mother hen. You know how they kind of watch over their kids. You hurt my kids, you're really getting into trouble. And she kind of treated me that way as well. And that's kind of what Solomon is talking about her. She's beautiful in so many ways, but yet she's always got my back. Verses 5-6, your head crowns you like Mount Carmel, and the hair of your head is like purple. A king is held captive by your tresses. How fair and how pleasant you are, O love, with your delights. And Solomon notes that her hair was like a crown and that her beauty holds him captive as a slave. He is so enamored with her beauty that she's got him captivated. Verses 7-9. This statue of yours is like a palm tree. Now this is very graphic. The statue of yours is like a palm tree, and your breasts are like its clusters. I said, I will go up to the palm tree. I will take hold of its branches. Let now your breasts be like clusters of the vine, the fragrance of your breath like apples, and the root of your mouth like the best wine. The wine goes down smoothly for my beloved. She's speaking now. The wine goes down smoothly for my beloved, moving gently the lips of sleepers. Now Solomon here can no longer contain himself. He desires to have his wife, and he wants to pollinate and consume her. In this culture, and I've seen this when we've gone to a lot of Caribbean places, that these people would climb these palm trees. This is how they pollinated the palm trees. They would climb the palm trees, and they would seize the flowers, and they would shake them. That's how they would pollinate the trees. Because I was wondering, why are these guys climbing these palm trees? But they were actually pollinating the trees. So this description is like climbing. When it talks about climbing her tree, he's talking about he wants to pollinate her, and so the woman. But then she interrupts him in mid-sentence, says, "You know, the wine goes down smoothly for my beloved, and is responsive to her husband, and they have drunk until they are full." This is very sexually explicit. Is what this is showing here. As I mentioned earlier, young Jewish boys were not allowed to read this until they were past 16, the Song of Solomon, and this is why, because it's very erratic. And then verse 10. I am my beloved's, and his desire is towards me. The Hebrew for the word desire means to consume something. She delights in the fact that her husband wants to consume her. Verse 11, come, my beloved, let us go forth to the field. Let us lodge in the villages. She is aggressive, and she wants to entice him away from work so that she can have him to herself. Verse 12, let us get up early to the vineyards. Let us see if the vine has budded, whether the grape blossoms are open and the pomegranates are in bloom. There I will give you my love. Once again, the sexual intimacy is referred to as a vineyard, a delight that nourishes. She is saying, let's see if this vineyard is still sweet and delightful. She's referring to it as on her honeymoon night. Am I still desirous of you? Do you still want me? Am I still sweet to you as I was on our wedding night? And then verse 13, the mandrakes give off a fragrance, and at our gates are pleasant fruits, all manner new and old, which I have laid up for you, my beloved. Now mandrakes were considered as that which excited and aided in childbearing. It's a strong come on when they use the word mandrakes. When she talks about the mandrakes give off a fragrance, and it talks, whenever they use reference mandrakes, it is very intimate, and it's a very strong come on. And she has delights he is accustomed to, but she has some surprises as well. She's creative. Now, men are very vulnerable during sex. If you want something, that's the time to ask for it. New car, jewelry, new house, that's the time to ask for it. Because for a man, all senses delight him. What he hears during sex, what he sees, what he feels, what he smells, what he tastes. He is so stimulated with her, and that's what this word mandrakes is referring to. He is so caught up in the moment. Men are very vulnerable. Chapter 8 now, verses 1 and 2. Oh, that you were like my brother, who nursed at my mother's breast. If I could find you outside, I would kiss you. I would not be despised. I would lead you and bring you to the house of my mother. She who used to instruct me, I would cause you to drink of spiced wine or the juice of my pomegranate. Now, she's being very spontaneous, and she wants to kiss him in public with the same passion she does in private. But in biblical times, the only men that a woman could touch in public were her brother or her father. She was not allowed to touch her husband because that was considered sexual in nature. And we see a lot of that even in Islamic countries today. And they have the same type of mindset that you can't, the only person that you can touch, a woman can't walk really, even with her husband, she can't touch her husband because it's so sexually explicit. But she can touch her husband, her father and her brothers. She desired that Solomon would be constantly intoxicated by the thought of her sexuality. And then in verses 3 and 4, his left hand is under my head, and his right hand embraces me. I charge you, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not stir up nor awaken love until it pleases. She has a longing for her husband, but such love must be nurtured and awakened in its proper time. This type of love cannot be forced or demeaned. This was a special time of celebration. And she's basically saying to these ladies around her, the women of Jerusalem, she is saying, listen, there's a right place and a right time for this type of intimacy. Don't awaken it until it's right. And then she's really just celebrating how good it is. Now, let me share some practical information about romance. Let me share, first of all, some factors that will kill romance in a marriage. Number one is sin. Romance dies when one or both persons become so wounded and disillusioned with a spouse that they have become calloused. Sin and harsh actions are unrepented of until the wounds of sin have removed all their feelings. And this is one of the things that I do with the Life Skills program or the TREC program. I have found that what a great tool, a great resource that was in helping bring healing to the wounds of our past. Because when I think I've taught here a while back for a great marriages class on how the family of origin affects our marriages. And it does. It affects our marriages greatly because sometimes we are wounded as children growing up, and we replicate what was taught for us. Maybe my dysfunction was my normal. And so I go into a marriage maybe with a person who has a very functional family life, but yet I'm very dysfunctional. So that causes me to act out in certain ways that's not healthy towards my spouse. And because of the sins of my past, I haven't taken them to the cross. I allow that to drive my behavior, and it affects my relationship. So sin, if not dealt with, will cause a lot of hardship in a marriage down the road. Because sin's purpose is to cause us to fall short of God's best. Sin's purpose causes us to want to miss the mark of what God has established for us. And so if the enemy can get us to sin, and to fall short of God's best, it affects our relationship with our spouse. So sin is the first thing that can cause romance to waver. Number two is age. Romance dies when a person focuses on the outer beauty rather than on the inner beauty of his or her spouse. We get older, and I mean, it's just a fact of life, but we can age gracefully. In fact, in a couple of weeks, maybe in a week or so, I'm going to be talking about in the book of Ecclesiastes, how we can grow old as a Christian and what's the benefits of that. But one of the things, neuroscience has shown also that when a husband and wife are healthy in their relationship, there's what's called oxytocin is released in our brains that takes a picture. This is why we can be married for 40, 50, 60, 70 years, and we still think of our spouse as the prettiest person, the prettiest woman in the world, because we have that thing in our mind that God has put there. It's what keeps us faithful. we have the picture in our mind of what our wife was when we got married, our honeymoon. And that's the picture that our brain takes. And so when we look at our spouse, we always see that. We kind of, even though the outward shell may be fading, but yet what we see is that inner beauty that attracted us to them in the first place. And so I encourage you, don't allow age and the superficiality to affect your relationship with your spouse. There's things that we need to learn and to look at that will help us to grow even more intimate and more in our relationship with our spouse. Number 3 is forgetfulness. This is interesting. Forgetfulness. This will affect romance in our marriage. Romance dies when couples forget the preciousness of their mate. Romance requires that each person keep in active memory what gave birth to their marriage. It requires that each person continue to remember the special traits in the spouse that fueled the attraction at the initial stages of their relationship. A lot of the marriage counseling that I do, one of the first things I will ask them is this. I said, obviously you were madly in love at one time because you wouldn't have gotten married. Unless it was a shotgun wedding, you were forced to get married, but that's way, way back when. They don't do those things anymore. So I would say, would you please stop? Right now, all you can feel is the disappointment. All you see is the anger, the pain that you're experiencing right now, and you cannot even begin to comprehend or even remember what it was like that attracted each other to each other. So I'll say, can we just stop? And I generally will start with the husband, and I will say, can you tell me what attracted you to your wife? What was it? Can you tell me that moment? Can you go back to that time and say, when you had that, yeah, that's the one I want to be with. Can you go back to that time? And then I'll say to her, can you tell me the time that he began to woo you and you were greatly attracted to that person? Can you go back? And so I will have them go through that exercise to go way back. And then I'll say, now tell me about your journey together a little bit. Can you help me to understand where the drift began to occur? Because if we can begin to identify where the drift began to occur in our relationship, maybe we can go back and fix that. And maybe there's some repenting that needs to take place. Maybe there's some things that need to be done to fix this drift. Because at one time you were madly in love. I performed hundreds of weddings for people. And that's not an exaggeration. One of the pastor friends of mine says, either you have married or buried almost everybody in the state of Wisconsin because everybody knows you. Well, I've been doing this for 40-some years. I guess I affect a lot of people. He said, but everybody knows you. And he goes, and they always say great things about you. Except for maybe there's one person that doesn't, but most of them do. Say great things about me. So I always try to get them to go back because I've done so many weddings where they're so enamored in the moment. And you look in their eyes and there's such love and they're intoxicated. It's probably the best way to describe it. They are so intoxicated with each other that you couldn't have a coherent conversation with them to save your life because they're so in love with each other. And so it always boggles my mind that they get to a place to where they're now hating each other. And I have a hard time wrapping my head around that. And so I will say, please help me to understand where the friction began. Help me to understand where the seeds were planted. Maybe it was in a coarse gesture. Maybe it was a snide remark to a friend that devalued your mate. She began to feel insignificant or not appreciated. Or maybe she said something about him that made him feel like a loser. What was it? Let's go back and let's try to stop the bleeding at that point. Forgetfulness is huge in causing romance to die in our marriage because we forget how precious our mate was to us, forget what really attracted them to us to begin with. And I think sometimes we need to reminisce about those things, maybe go on a date night and just talk about, when I first saw you, this is what I really liked about you. And I've actually had Gene say to me, the thing I liked about you is the thing that made me the most mad towards you. Which is my love for God. That was a thing that attracted her to me. She was attracted to the most was my love for God. But yet, when I began to put my love for God and helping other people to such an extent that I began to neglect her, so it became the thing that she started to dislike the most about me was my love for God. But when I was able to fix that and begin to put my priorities right, to realize that she is my first blessing that God has given me after salvation, that she's a blessing that He brought to me, and that I need to treat her as a treasure of God, as God's gift to me. And when I begin to put my priorities right, where she and my family is my number one ministry, when I begin to see that and put those things in right perspective, everything else began to flow out of that. My love for other people, my ability to help other people, because I was healthy emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I was able to help people because I was healthy. You know, it's interesting, as a counselor, some people say to me, "You're such a good counselor. It's just like you're reading my mail." In reality, I was living your life. I was living your life. That's why I could talk to such an expert, because I'm doing the things that you're complaining about in your own marriage. I'm doing them. And I can talk with such authority because I'm experiencing those types of rejection, those type of emotions, because I'm living it. And that's when I was able to deal with that and get my marriage where it's supposed to be, I was more healthy. I was able to communicate more health to other people as well. Number 4, the fourth area that really that kills our romance is laziness. We recite our vows to love, to honor, and cherish, and proceed without any effort to keep them. Love must be shown, honor must be expressed, and cherish is an attitude that must be displayed. Romance is a discipline. Romance is a discipline, and it takes work. It takes work to maintain the romance in our marriage, because of sin, because of age, because of forgetfulness. We have to be intentional. We have to work hard to make our marriage the best that God wants us to have. So what makes for great romance? Let's talk about this for just a few minutes. What makes for great romance? Number 1 is learn to be courteous. So many times we just take our mates for granted. We assume a lot of things without asking their opinion, asking what they would like to do, what they would like to experience, what are their aspirations. Learn to be courteous, putting their needs above your own. I think that's huge. Learn to be courteous. Because, when you're courteous to people, you value them. And so am I showing value to my mate, or am I taking them for granted and assuming a lot of things, and because they don't meet my expectations, I get angry and upset with them because they're not measuring up to my expectations. But have I considered their expectations? Have I considered the ability to help them become the person that God wants them to be? So learn to be courteous. It makes for great romance. Number 2, be together. Be together. For example, projects around the house, hobbies, going for walks together. I know my wife's love language is acts of service. She loves it when I do things with her. My love language is affirmation. I like to know I'm being appreciated, being valued. But yet hers is acts of service. And I've shared this with you before. I hate gardening, vegetable gardening. My wife's passion is vegetable gardening. My son-in-law actually put up a greenhouse for her next to her garden. So she's already out there trying to get seeds started and stuff like that. But the reason I hate it is because when I was a child, form of punishment was go pull weeds. You're disobedient. Go pull weeds. And we had a huge garden of corn and potatoes, and we had to hoe the potatoes and all this stuff, and it was just huge. And so when she goes to the garden, she says, "Are you going to help me? Come to the garden." Now, what did I do wrong? What am I going to go to the garden? Are you punishing me? But when I realized, even though I hate it, it means so much to her. So I will do it because it means a lot to her. And any projects around the house, if I help her with those projects, my biggest help is just staying out of her way, but But if I help her with those projects, she likes that I make the initiative, the offer to help her. And it doesn't mean I have to get involved. Maybe I'm doing something else. And, I did some marriage counseling last night and on Zoom, and a couple that I'm doing a wedding for in May. And I was sharing with them, I said, back when I was growing up, when I was younger, we had this mindset that we had a traditional relationship. This is men's work, this is women's work. I said, this was way before women began to work. So I said, but in today's culture, we both work. So is it fair for her to work 8 or 9 hours a day and then come home for me to plop down on the couch and watch TV while she's making dinner, cleaning up the dinner dishes? I mean, that's not fair. We have to identify different things, the roles that we can help each other so we both can enjoy each other. So now she'll generally do the cooking for the most part. There are times where I'll cook or grill, barbecue, but I always clean up. I'm the one who does the dishes. I'm the one who puts things away. She'll do laundry. I fold, put them away. I mean, it's just, we work together. And so there's acts of service, doing things together, different projects. Because you see, it's not just about me, it's about us. How can I free her time so she can spend more time with me? And how can she help me so I can spend more time with her? It's doing things together. So this makes for great romance, is be together. Number 3, be expressive. Say how you feel without attacking as well as compliment. So be expressive. Let them know. I'm not saying we should never be a doormat. You should be always able to share your feelings with your mate and say, this is how I feel. And I don't mean to offend you or hurt you, but this is really how I feel. When you say or do this, I feel this way. And so you can't argue with a person's emotions. They just are. And you've heard people say, well, you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't act that way. It's my emotions. I need to express them. And I should not be attacked for that. I should be encouraged to have the confidence and the comfort level to share how I feel, and vice versa, without attacking or demeaning. So be expressive. Number 4 is be affectionate in a non-sexual manner. For most guys, they only show affection when they want to be sexual. But how about giving your spouse a hug? Just say, I just really appreciate you, and just want to let you know how much I love you today, and that I just think you're wonderful. Or sometimes it's not even saying anything. Sometimes it's just a hug, or maybe it's a little touch on the shoulders, a little squeeze, or something like that, just to let them know that you acknowledge their existence, that they're here, and you're glad they're there. So be affectionate. Number 5, be creative in your lovemaking. Spontaneity is always perceived as care. So be creative in your lovemaking. You don't have to always do everything the same way. So make it exciting. Sometimes, we've done things where we've actually, packed up a suitcase and say, I'm going to take you away for the weekend. Not let her know and just go. And so forth. And we've done things like that where we've gone to Door County just very spontaneously, because I'm not a spontaneous person. I'm a planner. I need to know everything, whereas my wife is more spontaneous, but it really excites her when I'm spontaneous, because it's out of character for me. You've heard me say that she has said many times that you're a perfect target for an assassin, because you do everything exactly the same time, same place, same way. So you're so predictable. So when I'm not predictable and do something spontaneous, that excites her. Number 6 is being thoughtful. Being thoughtful. There have been times where I've just been exhausted, just don't want to do anything. But I realize she's also exhausted and probably doesn't want to do anything. But there's been times where I say, well, let's just go out for dinner tonight. You and I, we'll just go out. Or we're going to go do this. I'm looking right now to buy her a pickup truck. Generally it's a guy that has a pickup truck. I've always had pickup trucks and I've gotten rid of them. But I bought her a new car here a couple of years ago, and she treats it like it's a truck. I mean, she'll haul mulch, dirt, compost, everything in there, and then I'm the one who vacuums it out and cleans it up because I can't stand dirt. So last week I decided, I think I'm going to buy her a pickup truck, just an old beater. It doesn't have to be new. It can have a lot of miles, because all it has to do is probably a total of 5 miles round trip whenever she uses it to haul her mulch or haul her dirt. So I'm looking I think so this weekend we may be going up looking at a pickup truck for her. And, it's a 2005 or something like that. But I just don't want her to beat up her car anymore. I said, I'll buy an old pickup truck, get liability insurance on it. You can take it to work because she works at a greenhouse. I said, you can take it to work and you can haul your sod home in that. But she comes home and this 2018 Cross Trek and hatchback, and she's got a load of buckets full of dirt and mulch, and of course it tips over and is down behind all the crevices. And I'm going, oh man, why do you do that? Well, what good is a car if I can't use it? so buy you a truck. You need a truck, not a car. So be thoughtful. So there's some things that will encourage her. 7, be energetic. Be energetic about things. And I think that's huge. Sometimes initiate. Let's go for a walk. And even though you're exhausted, you just don't feel like moving. I just want to go home and take a nap. But being energetic and enthusiastic. Number 8, be insightful. Develop love languages that you both recognize. And it's funny, we were driving to church here this past weekend, and it's scary. I mean, she shared with someone, we walked into the church because it's scary. We've been married almost 40 years. We're starting to complete each other's sentences. And I'll be thinking something, and he'll say what I'm thinking, or he'll be thinking of something, and I'll say exactly what he's thinking. And we were commenting about the number of coons we saw laying along the road as we were driving in off of Highway 60. We go, man, there's coons everywhere. And then I remember getting off the ramp coming, and she goes, is that a coon? I said, no, it's a big piece of rubber, from a tire from a truck. And then we say this almost simultaneously. They both taste the same. Because she was referencing my being from West Virginia, being a hillbilly, eating roadkill, and I looked at that, and I looked at her. I said they both taste, and she said exactly that same phrase, exactly the same time. It was almost like it was in stereo. She goes, this is bad. We look at the same thing, we have the same comments. So be insightful. Develop those little love languages, and it's happening more and more. I guess Bernie and Audrey probably do that all the time. So that's probably why we don't talk. We know what each other's going to say. We don't need to talk anymore. we sit in a chair and have a complete conversation without saying a word. All right, but this is not in your notes. You might want to write this one down. Number 9, and it's probably the most important thing to make for great romance, is praying together. Praying together. I think that is just huge. Because if you're able to pray together, it's very hard and difficult to be angry with each other. And so I think make that a priority, to pray together and thank God for one another. Thank God for the kids that He's given you, the family, the friends, and just use times of prayer and praise, tonight at night, maybe before you go to bed. But have that little season or segment of time to just pray together. And say, is there something I can pray for you about today? I mean, I know you're going to work tomorrow. Is there something I can pray for you about? Is there something you have to deal with at work, and you need God's wisdom that I can pray for you? Ask each other, are there things that I can pray for you or with you about certain things? That will make for great romance, because again, it shows that the one who has your heart, who is God, allows you to use that gift of dialogue between you and God to pray for the gift that He's given you as well. And I think that speaks volumes in our relationship. So again, in summary, what makes for great romance? Learn to be courteous, be together, be expressive, be affectionate, be creative in your lovemaking, be thoughtful, be energetic, be insightful, and pray together. Amen. Let's pray. Father God, I want to thank you for your word here today. I ask, Lord, that you would help us to be intentional about stirring up romance in our marriage. Help us, Lord, to be the people that you want us to be. The other people will see us and say, I want what they've got. And Father, we know that it's based upon the grace that you have given us, and we thank you for that in Jesus' name. Amen.
Okay, I hope that those 8 things that Pastor Andy described for great romance are 8 things that you will start to put into practice with your loved one. A couple of the things that I wrote down: think back to why you fell in love. What did you first fall in love with about your partner? Like, go back to those memories, those feelings that you had. That will help you in your romance. And the other thing that struck me was romance is a discipline. It takes work. Be intentional. Okay? Marriage is work. Okay? In the beginning stages, it's a little bit easier, but as you go through life together, things change. You change as a person, stages of life change. So your romance also needs to have a little more effort put into it. So I hope that you gained some wisdom from this presentation. And I would encourage you, take the discussion questions that we emailed you. Sit down right now. There's 5 questions. Answer them together. Okay? This will help bring you closer together if you know what the other person is thinking. Last thing we would request of you is please fill out the online evaluation that was included with your original email. We will also send it out to you another time in a separate email, but this helps us evaluate our events. What can we improve? You can help us do that. So go out there and improve your romance and have a wonderful rest of your day.